Simone Jackson checked herself in the mirror one last time before heading out. Her Culinary Connect uniform was crisp and clean, the company logo perfectly centered on her chest. She pulled her braids back into a neat ponytail and grabbed her car keys. Today was delivery day, but not just any delivery day. At 35, Simone didn't need to make deliveries herself. Her company had grown enough to employ 20 delivery drivers. But once a month, she put on the same uniform as her employees and hit the streets. She called it her reality check, a way to stay connected to both her customers and what her employees experience daily. The boss needs to know what the trenches feel like, she often said. Simone grew up in Oakwood, a struggling neighborhood where dreams often died young. Her parents worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table. They taught her the value of hard work and dignity. Her father always told her, "It doesn't matter what job you do it with pride." After high school, Simone worked days and studied nights. It took her 7 years to finish business school while holding down full-time jobs. She started in fast food, then retail, then worked as an administrative assistant at a food distribution company. Each job taught her something new about business, service, and people. The idea for Culinary Connect came to her during her time at the distribution company. She noticed how many high-end restaurants struggled with delivery logistics, while office workers and wealthy households were willing to pay premium prices for quality food delivered properly. The market gap was clear. Starting with just her car and a handful of restaurant partnerships, Simone built Culinary Connect from nothing. She designed special delivery containers that kept hot food hot and cold food cold. She created an app that tracked deliveries in real time. She personally visited every restaurant partner to ensure quality standards. 5 years later, Culinary Connect had become the go-to delivery service for premium food in the city. They served exclusive restaurants and wealthy clients who wanted the best. The company made good money, and Simone made sure her employees earned fair wages and benefits, things she never had in her early working years. Today's delivery was special. Westfield Partners, one of the city's most prestigious investment firms, had signed a contract with Culinary Connect. Their first order was for an important board meeting, and Simone wanted to handle it personally. This could open doors to the entire financial district, she told Marcus, her operations manager, as she loaded the carefully packaged meals into her car. "You sure you want to do this one yourself?" Marcus asked. "I could send our best team." Simone smiled. "I am our best team. Besides, I want to see their setup firsthand so we can customize future deliveries." As she drove downtown toward the gleaming skyscrapers, Simone felt proud of how far she'd come. From her neighborhood, few people ever made it to places like Westfield Partners, except maybe to clean the floors or deliver packages. Now she was arriving as a business owner, even if today she wore the uniform of a delivery person. She pulled into the underground parking garage of the Westfield building, checked the order one last time, and headed for the service elevator with her catering cart. Simone had no idea that in the next hour, her patience and professionalism would be tested in ways she hadn't experienced in years, or that this delivery would change the course of her business forever. The service elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor of the Westfield Partners building. Simone pushed her catering cart forward into a hallway with polished marble floors. The walls were decorated with expensive artwork, and large windows offered stunning views of the city below. She checked the order details on her phone one more time. The food was for a board meeting in Conference Room A, scheduled to start in 30 minutes. Perfect timing for setup. As Simone approached the reception desk, she put on her professional smile. A thin woman with perfectly styled blonde hair looked up from her computer, eyes quickly scanning Simone's uniform and the cart of food. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked, her voice cold. "Good morning. I'm from Culinary Connect with the catering order for the board meeting," Simone said cheerfully. The receptionist frowned. "We were expecting the delivery 15 minutes ago." Simone checked her watch. "Actually, we're right on schedule. The confirmation states delivery at 10:30 for an 11 o'clock meeting." "Well, Mr. Harrington specifically said it would be here by 10:15. The receptionist sighed loudly. "I guess I'll call to see if they still want it." Simone kept her smile fixed while the receptionist made a show of picking up the phone and dialing. She had faced this kind of treatment before and knew better than to react. "Yes, Mr. Harrington. The food delivery person is finally here. Yes, I'll send her to conference room A. The receptionist hung up and pointed down the hall. Last door on the right. Try not to make any more delays. Thank you, Simone said, keeping her voice pleasant as she pushed her cart forward. As she moved down the hallway, Simone noticed several employees watching her. Some barely glanced her way, while others stared a bit too long. She was used to being invisible in places like this, or standing out in the wrong way. When she reached conference room A, she knocked politely before entering. 3 men in expensive suits were already inside, discussing something over a stack of papers. Finally, said the oldest man, who appeared to be in his 60s with silver hair and a red tie, "We were about to call and cancel the order." "I apologize if there was confusion about the timing, sir," Simone said. "The delivery is actually right on schedule as confirmed." "Well, whatever," the man dismissed with a wave of his hand. "Just set it up quickly. The board members will be here soon." Simone nodded and began unloading the food. She worked efficiently, arranging everything beautifully on the side table as she had been taught in her hospitality training years ago. One of the younger executives, a man in his 30s with slicked back hair, watched her work while leaning against the wall. "Hey, Thomas," he called to his colleague. "Didn't you say this was supposed to be some premium service? I thought they'd send someone a bit more professional." Thomas laughed. Maybe they were short-staffed today. Simone continued working, pretending not to hear them. She carefully labeled each dish with the elegant cards Culinary Connect was known for. "Careful with those trays," the older man barked when Simone adjusted the placement of a seafood platter. "Those tables probably cost more than you make in a month." "I'll be very careful, sir," Simone replied quietly. As she finished setting up, a young woman entered the room carrying a stack of folders. She noticed the tension and gave Simone a small, apologetic smile. "The spread looks amazing," the woman said. "Thank you," Simone replied. "Everything is labeled with ingredients, and there are special meals for those with dietary restrictions as requested." "Did you get lost on the way here?" Thomas asked with a smirk. "The financial district can be confusing for some people." "Not at all," Simone answered calmly. "I know the city quite well." She completed the setup, had the older executive sign the delivery confirmation, and headed back toward the door. "Service entrance is down 1 floor for next time," the older man called after her. Simone turned, smiled professionally, and said, "I'll remember that. Thank you for choosing Culinary Connect. Enjoy your meeting." As she pushed her empty cart back toward the elevator, Simone took a deep breath. This treatment wasn't new to her, but it still stung. What these men didn't know was that they hadn't just insulted a delivery person. They had insulted the woman who would be meeting with their CEO tomorrow about a major service contract. Simone smiled to herself. Tomorrow would be very interesting indeed. Back at the Culinary Connect headquarters, Simone parked her delivery car and walked through the front doors of the converted warehouse space. The open concept office buzzed with activity. Dispatch coordinators managed delivery routes on large screens, while marketing team members huddled around a table discussing new promotional materials. Marcus, her operations manager and oldest friend, spotted her and walked over. His normally cheerful face looked concerned. "How did the Westfield delivery go?" he asked, following her to her office. Simone set down her keys before answering. "About as well as you'd expect at a place like that." "That bad, huh?" Marcus leaned against her doorframe. Simone sat down at her desk, removing the company cap she'd worn during the delivery. "The usual. Late comments when I was actually on time, condescending remarks. Suggestions to use the service entrance next time." She shrugged. "Nothing I haven't heard before." "Want me to call and complain?" Marcus offered, his voice tight with anger. "Absolutely not," Simone said firmly. "Remember our plan. Tomorrow I meet with their CEO, Stephen Phillips, about expanding our services to all their corporate events." Marcus grinned slowly. "So tomorrow you go in as the CEO, not the delivery woman." "Exactly." Simone turned to her computer and pulled up the Westfield Partners contract proposal. "I've been doing this long enough to know when the treatment is about the uniform, not the service." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions. Simone approved a new delivery route optimization software, interviewed 2 potential managers for their new downtown location, and reviewed financial projections with her accountant. At home that evening, Simone called her mother as she did every Tuesday night. "How was your day, baby?" her mother asked after they exchanged greetings. "I did the Westfield Partners delivery myself," Simone said, preparing a cup of tea in her kitchen. Her mother sighed. "Let me guess, they treated you like you were nothing." "You know how it goes, Mom." Simone stirred honey into her tea. "But tomorrow will be different." "You still going through with your little surprise?" "Of course," Simone said. "It's not just about making a point. It's about seeing who people really are. How they treat someone they think has no power tells me everything I need to know about whether I want to do business with them." After saying goodnight to her mother, Simone laid out her clothes for the next day, a tailored navy blue suit, crisp white blouse, and the pearl earrings her father had given her when she graduated business school. She also prepared her portfolio with the expanded service proposal for Westfield Partners. The next morning, Simone arrived at Culinary Connect early. She reviewed notes with her sales director, Jade, who would accompany her to the meeting. "Remember?" Simone told Jade as they gathered their materials. "No matter what happens in there, follow my lead." "Still not telling me what you're expecting?" Jade asked, raising an eyebrow. "Let's just say I've already met some of their executives," Simone replied with a small smile. They arrived at the Westfield Partners building at 9:45 for their 10 o'clock meeting. This time, Simone walked through the main entrance instead of the service elevator. She wore her CEO confidence like armor, striding across the lobby in her heels with Jade by her side. At the reception desk sat the same blonde woman from yesterday. She looked up as they approached, her expression professional and attentive, entirely different from how she had greeted Simone the day before. "Good morning. Simone Jackson and Jade Torres for a 10 o'clock meeting with Stephen Phillips," Simone said calmly. The receptionist's eyes widened just slightly as she made the connection. "Ms. Jackson, from Culinary Connect." "That's right," Simone replied with a pleasant smile. "I believe we met yesterday when I delivered your board meeting order." The color drained from the receptionist's face as she picked up the phone with a trembling hand. "Mr. Phillips, your 10 o'clock appointment is here." "Yes, Ms. Jackson from Culinary Connect. I'll send them right up." The private elevator took Simone and Jade directly to the top floor of the Westfield building. Unlike the service elevator Simone had used yesterday, this one had polished wood panels and soft lighting. Classical music played quietly in the background. "You seem amused," Jade whispered, noticing Simone's small smile. "Just enjoying the difference a day makes," Simone replied as the doors opened. A young assistant greeted them in a spacious waiting area. "Ms. Jackson, Ms. Torres, welcome to Westfield Partners. Mr. Phillips will be with you shortly. Can I offer you coffee or water?" "Water would be lovely, thank you," Simone said. As they waited, Simone glanced around at the expensive artwork and city views. The same paintings she had noticed yesterday lined the walls, but today she could take her time admiring them without pushing a heavy cart. After a few minutes, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and glasses emerged from the corner office. "Ms. Jackson, I'm Stephen Phillips." He extended his hand with a warm smile. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard remarkable things about Culinary Connect." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Phillips," Simone replied, shaking his hand firmly. "This is Jade Torres, our Director of Corporate Accounts." "Wonderful. Please come in." Phillips gestured toward his office. "I've invited a few key team members to join us." Simone followed Phillips into a large conference room connected to his office. Her steps faltered slightly when she saw who was waiting inside. Seated at the table were the same three men who had been in conference room yesterday, including Thomas and the older executive with the silver hair. "Let me introduce our team," Phillips said, unaware of Simone's recognition. "This is Richard Harrington, our CFO, Thomas Westlake, VP of Operations, and James Chen, our Events Director." The three men rose to greet Simone and Jade. None of them showed any sign of recognizing Simone at first. "I understand your team did an excellent job with our board meeting catering yesterday," Phillips continued. "The food received many compliments." "I'm glad to hear that," Simone replied smoothly. "We take great pride in our service." As they all took their seats, Simone noticed Richard Harrington, the older executive who had made the comment about the service entrance, studying her face with growing uncertainty. Have we met before? He finally asked, interrupting Philip's small talk. The room fell quiet. Simon took a deliberate sip of water before answering. Yes, Mr. Harrington, we have. I personally delivered your catering order yesterday. The color drained from Harrington's face. Thomas Westlake, who had made the professional comment, suddenly became very interested in his notepad. You delivered the food? Phillips asked, clearly confused. I did, Simon confirmed. At Culinary Connect, I believe leaders should understand every aspect of their business. Once a month, I make deliveries alongside our regular staff. I see, Phillips said slowly, looking between Simon and his uncomfortable executives. It provides valuable insights, Simon continued calmly. For example, I now have first-hand experience of how your staff interacts with service providers. The tension in the room thickened. James Chen, who had remained silent during yesterday's delivery, looked down at his hands. Thomas Westlake's face had turned bright red. Is there something I should know about? Phillips asked, his friendly tone now edged with concern. Before anyone could respond, the door opened and a young woman entered with more water pitchers. Simon recognized her as the same person who had thanked her for the food set up yesterday. Sorry to interrupt, she said, then stopped abruptly when she saw Simon. Oh, you're the woman from yesterday, the one who set up the catering. Yes, I am, Simon replied with a genuine smile. And today I'm here as the CEO of Culinary Connect to discuss expanding our services with Westfield Partners. The young woman's eyes widened. She looked from Simon to the executives, clearly putting pieces together. Wow, that's amazing, she said honestly. Thank you, Simon replied. And you were one of the few people who treated me with respect yesterday. I appreciate that. As the young woman left the room, Phillips turned to his team with a questioning look. Would someone care to explain what happened yesterday? Richard Harrington cleared his throat, his earlier confidence completely vanished. I think we may owe Ms. Jackson an apology. Thomas Westlake nodded nervously, finally meeting Simon's eyes. We absolutely do. The conference room fell silent. Stephen Phillips looked from his uncomfortable executives to Simon, his expression growing more concerned by the second. I'd like to understand exactly what happened, Phillips said firmly. Richard Harrington shifted in his seat. There may have been some unprofessional comments made during yesterday's delivery. What kind of comments? Phillips pressed. Thomas Westlake jumped in. It was just workplace banter, nothing serious. Simon raised an eyebrow but remained silent, allowing the men to dig themselves deeper. Ms. Jackson, Phillips turned to her, would you mind sharing your experience? Jade glanced at Simon, wondering how her boss would handle this delicate moment. Simon took a deep breath and spoke calmly. When I arrived exactly on time for the delivery, I was told I was late. Mr. Harrington suggested I use the service entrance next time and made a comment about the tables costing more than I make in a month. Mr. Westlake questioned why someone like me was sent for a premium service and asked if I got lost in the financial district, suggesting it might be confusing for some people. Philip's expression darkened with each detail. He removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. I see, he said quietly, and this is accurate. Neither Harrington nor Westlake denied it. James Chen, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. It's accurate, sir. I was there and didn't say anything to stop it. That was wrong of me. Phillips turned back to Simon. Ms. Jackson, I want to offer my sincere apologies for how you were treated. This behavior doesn't represent our company values. I appreciate that, Simon replied, but I'm not here for apologies. I'm here to determine if our companies can work together effectively. And can we? Phillips asked directly. Simon looked around the table before answering. That depends on what happens next. The young woman from earlier knocked and entered again with a folder. The quarterly reports you asked for, Mr. Phillips. Thank you, Emily, Phillips said. As Emily placed the folder on the table, she gave Simon another smile. Simon noticed something in her expression, respect, but also something like hope. After Emily left, Phillips turned back to his executives. While I determine how to address this situation internally, I think we owe Ms. Jackson and Ms. Torres our full attention regarding their proposal. Jade opened her portfolio and began presenting Culinary Connect's extended services plan. As she spoke about corporate event packages and daily office deliveries, Simone observed the three men. Harrington looked embarrassed but attentive. Westlake kept glancing at her with nervous eyes. Jen was taking detailed notes, nodding occasionally. When the presentation ended, Phillips spoke first. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. Your service quality and attention to detail are impressive." "There's one more thing," Simon said. "If we move forward, I need assurance that all Culinary Connect employees will be treated with respect, regardless of their position or how they look." Phillips nodded immediately. "Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to discuss implementing company-wide sensitivity training." He looked pointedly at his executives. "Recent events have made it clear we need it." "I know someone who runs excellent programs," Simon offered. "I'd be happy to connect you." As the meeting concluded, they agreed to finalize the contract next week. Phillips walked them to the elevator personally. "Ms. Jackson," he said quietly as Jade stepped into the elevator first, "I admire how you've handled this situation. Many would have simply taken their business elsewhere." Simon smiled. "Sometimes the greatest change comes from difficult conversations, Mr. Phillips. Besides, I saw someone in your office today who made me think there's hope for positive change here." "Emily?" Phillips guessed. "Yes, people like her are why I give second chances." As the elevator doors closed, Jade turned to Simon with wide eyes. "That was the most masterful handling of a situation I've ever seen. You never raised your voice once." "Sometimes," Simon replied, "you don't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes just showing up as your full self is the loudest statement you can make." Back at Culinary Connect headquarters, Simon's staff gathered around as she and Jade returned from the Westfield meeting. Word had spread quickly about their boss's undercover delivery and today's follow-up meeting. Everyone wanted to hear what happened. "So, did their faces drop when they realized who you were?" Marcus asked eagerly. Simone set her portfolio on a nearby desk. "Let's just say it was an educational meeting for everyone involved." Translation: "She absolutely schooled them," Jade added with a grin, without ever raising her voice or showing anger. It was masterful. The team broke into applause and cheers. Simone held up her hands. All right. It feels good to see people face consequences for bad behavior. I won't deny that. But this isn't about revenge or making people feel bad. It's about dignity and respect." "Did you fire them as clients?" asked Deshawn from the marketing team. "No," Simon replied. "We're moving forward with the contract." Surprised murmurs spread through the group. "Why keep working with people who disrespected you?" Letitia, one of the newer delivery drivers, asked. Simon leaned against the desk, because sometimes walking away feels good but creates no change. Their CEO seems genuinely committed to addressing the problem. And there was a young woman there, Emily, who treated me with respect even when she thought I was just a delivery person. She looked specifically at the delivery team members. "This company exists partly because I know what it feels like to be treated as invisible. Every person who wears our uniform deserves respect, and I'll keep fighting for that wherever I can make a difference." After the impromptu meeting broke up, Simone retreated to her office. She needed a quiet moment to process everything. The confrontation had taken more emotional energy than she'd expected. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. It was Letitia, the delivery driver who had questioned her decision. "Got a minute?" Letitia asked. "Of course. Come in." Letitia closed the door behind her. "I wanted to apologize for questioning your decision in front of everyone." "No apology needed," Simone assured her. "It was a fair question." Letitia sat in the chair across from Simone's desk. "I've been delivering for 3 companies before this one. Culinary Connect is the first place where I've felt, I don't know, like a person, not just a pair of hands carrying food." Simone nodded, understanding completely. "Yesterday," Letitia continued, "I delivered to an office where the manager complained I was 3 minutes late, even though there was literally a car accident blocking the street. He talked to me like I was stupid." "I'm sorry that happened," Simone said quietly. "No, that's not what I'm trying to say." Letitia leaned forward. "What I'm saying is, after working here and seeing how you run things, the first time I spoke up for myself, I showed him the GPS tracker that proved I took the fastest route despite the accident. I was professional but firm. Good for you, Simone said, genuinely proud. He apologized, Letitia said, looking surprised even now. A little one, but still. And it felt good. That's because of the confidence I've gained working here, seeing how you value everyone. After Letitia left, Simone's phone rang. The caller ID showed Stephen Phillips from Westfield Partners. Ms. Jackson, I hope I'm not interrupting, Phillips said when she answered. Not at all. How can I help you? I wanted to update you personally. I've had individual meetings with Richard, Thomas, and James. All three have been placed on probation, and they'll be the first participants in our new sensitivity training program. I appreciate you taking this seriously, Simon replied. There's more, Phillips continued. Emily, who you met today, has been promoted to our Diversity and Inclusion Committee. She specifically requested this after learning what happened. She said meeting you inspired her. After ending the call, Simone sat back in her chair, a smile slowly spreading across her face. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. You never know who's watching when you stand tall in difficult moments. One delivery, one brave conversation had started ripples of change that would affect many lives. That was worth more than any contract. 2 weeks after the memorable meeting at Westfield Partners, the expanded contract was in full swing. Culinary Connect now provided daily lunch deliveries to Westfield's 3 office locations, plus catering for all their corporate events. The business relationship was off to a strong start, but Simone knew the real test would be in the day-to-day interactions. Today was delivery day again. Simone's monthly ritual of working in the trenches alongside her team. She pulled into the parking lot of Culinary Connect at 6:30 a.m., earlier than usual. Marcus was already there, organizing the day's routes on the dispatch board. You're here early, he said, surprised to see her in uniform again so soon. Didn't expect to see you in delivery gear for at least another 2 weeks. Simone checked her delivery schedule on the tablet. I wanted to handle the Westfield delivery myself today. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Testing them? Let's call it following up, Simone replied with a small smile. I want to see if anything has really changed. By 10:15 a.m., Simone was pulling into the Westfield Partners building again. This time, she used the main entrance, pushing her catering cart through the front lobby with confidence. She noticed several employees doing double takes as she passed. Word had clearly spread about who she was. At the reception desk sat a new face, a young man who greeted her with a warm smile. Good morning. You must be from Culinary Connect, he said cheerfully. Yes, delivery for the marketing department meeting, Simone replied. The receptionist checked his computer. Perfect, you're right on time. Let me call someone to escort you up. A minute later, Emily appeared from the elevator. Her face brightened when she saw Simone. Ms. Jackson, I didn't expect to see you making deliveries yourself, she said, walking over to greet her. Please call me Simone, she replied, shaking Emily's hand. And this is what I do once a month. Work alongside my team to stay connected to every part of the business. As they rode the elevator up, Emily filled Simone in on changes that have been happening at Westfield. The sensitivity training started last week. You should have seen Richard Harrington's face during the role-playing exercises, Emily said with a small laugh. But honestly, he seems to be taking it seriously. Thomas too. That's good to hear, Simone replied. And I've been working with HR to create new company guidelines about how we treat all service providers and visitors. Emily continued, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Mr. Phillips has been incredibly supportive. When they reached the marketing department floor, Simon was surprised to see Richard Harrington waiting near the conference room. He looked uncomfortable in his expensive suit as he spotted her. Ms. Jackson, he said, stepping forward. I heard you were making today's delivery. Mr. Harrington. Simon nodded, keeping her expression neutral. He cleared his throat. I wanted to be here to apologize in person. My behavior was inexcusable. Simon studied his face and saw what appeared to be genuine remorse. We all make mistakes, Mr. Harrington, she said finally. What matters is what we learn from them. Indeed, he agreed quietly. Would you allow me to help you set up? I think it's time I learned what your job actually entails. Simone was momentarily speechless. Then she smiled and gestured to the cart. Sure, you can start by helping me unload those bottom trays. For the next 15 minutes, Richard Harrington, CFO of Westfield Partners, worked alongside Simone setting up the catering. He listened carefully to her instructions and asked thoughtful questions about food temperature and presentation. As they finished, Harrington stepped back to look at their work. I never realized how much detail goes into this. It's not just dropping off food. Every job has its complexities when done well, Simon replied. Harrington nodded slowly. My father was a janitor at a hospital for 30 years. He used to say something similar. As Simone prepared to leave, Emily walked her back to the elevator. What you did, showing up that day as yourself and standing your ground without anger, it changed things here, Emily said. It made me realize I could speak up too. That's the real victory, Simon told her. Not the contract or the apologies, but knowing that something shifted in how people see each other. As the elevator doors closed, Simon felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond business success. Sometimes the most important changes came from the most unexpected moments.